Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir tout le monde. Welcome to the Royal Aeronautical Society's Montreal branch 17th Annual Assad Kotaite Lecture. My name is Fadi El-Masri, and I'm the treasurer of the Montreal branch, and have the distinct pleasure of being the master of ceremonies for tonight. A couple of small housekeeping items. This event is being recorded and will be made available after the event. I would like to inform you that there will be a question and answer period. You may ask your questions through the Q&A chat function on the right-hand side. We will try to answer all the questions, but may run out of time. So if you include your name and contact information, we will try to follow up after the event. It now gives me distinct pleasure to introduce the chair of the Montreal branch, Dr. John Maris. Dr. Maris is the president of Marinvent Corporation. He is an Aviation Week and Space Technology Laureate and was awarded Canada's oldest aeronautical prize, the Trans-Canada Trophy, for his contributions to Canadian aerospace. John was inducted in the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame in 2018 and is a fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society. We are very lucky to have him as the chair of the branch. I have been working with John for over a year now, and it gives me great pleasure to pass it on to John. Over to you.
Well, Fadi, you're far too kind to me. Thank you so much for those kind words. So in my turn, it gives me distinct pleasure to introduce the president of our society, Professor Jonathan Cooper. Jonathan Cooper is not only the president of the society, but he also holds the Airbus Sir George White Professorship of Aerospace Engineering at the University of Bristol. And notwithstanding that, he's found some time to leave us a message because he's been battling COVID this last little while, and we didn't feel it would be appropriate to have the good professor up at midnight England time to address us directly. So he's been kind enough to leave us the following message, and without further ado, I'll hand you over to Professor Cooper.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Cooper. I'm honoured to be the president of the Royal Aeronautical Society. The RAES is the world's leading professional membership organisation covering the entire aerospace and aviation communities, with over 25,000 members in nearly 100 countries. I'm very pleased to be able to address you on the occasion of the annual Assad Kotaite lecture hosted by the Montreal branch. Our founding fathers set up the Society for the advancement of aerial navigation, and I'm sure they will be really pleased to see how far we have advanced technically in the past 150 years, and also how the Society has continued to play a role in facilitating and influencing developments across aviation and into space. Part of the Royal Aeronautical Society mission is to provide influence and leadership to the aerospace and aviation domains, disseminating impartial and authoritative knowledge and information to a broad audience, and also to attract and support a diverse and active membership based both nationally and internationally. Currently, Council is considering the way forward for the next 5 years, particularly in relation to the effects of COVID on the operation of the Society and its membership. The key focus will be on 1. Becoming generally international with more international reach by increasing a global and diverse participation in activities with target audiences around the globe. 2. Digitalization of the Society needs to improve so that digital delivery becomes an integral part of our day-to-day business. 3, our volunteer strategy needs considerable work so that a larger, diverse, engaged and inclusive global group of volunteers are recruited across the aviation and aerospace sectors for different types of volunteering activities. And finally, the Society still needs much improvement in our progress to meet our aspirations to be a truly diverse and inclusive organisation in both word and deed. One of the key strengths of the Society is its branches and divisions. They really are the lifeblood of the Royal Aeronautical Society. And one of the things that I've tried to do during my time as president has been to try to strengthen the bonds between the Central Society and its branches. We have another branches brief in the next few days where various matters will be discussed, and I'm very pleased to hear that the Montreal branch will be attending. I'm also delighted that the Montreal branch epitomises the Society's vision through an emphasis on youth and diversity, particularly through the branch's sponsorship of the Society's Women in Aviation Network, a Canadian Young Members Network, which organises the branch Any Row, Young Persons Lecture Competition, and cool aeronautics events for primary schools, and its creation of a local membership structure facilitating youth and student participation in all branch activities. You also have an emphasis on alliances, e.g. with the CASI, the AIAA, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and various parts of industry. And finally, your emphasis is on electronic platforms. So the pandemic has had some silver linings in both helping us perfect the use of virtual platforms and making us aware of the facilities available across the Society that reduce our communications workload and improve its quality. Indeed, the move towards electronic platforms has greatly increased the attendance of many lectures and events, enabling more people to be able to attend than they previously could when travel constraints hindered participation. So I would like to offer my sincere congratulations to the Montreal branch for their continuing contribution to the Royal Aeronautical Society and the aerospace and aviation communities in their area. I was also pleased to see that the Montreal branch's former chair, Captain Donald Van Dyke, was recognised this year with a service award from the Society. This award was very well deserved for the contribution that Donald has made over the years. I understand that he's with you for this event, so congratulations, Donald. And finally, I'd like to thank you all for attending tonight's lecture, and also thanks to the guest speaker, Major General Mark Smith. I hope that you all have an enjoyable and informative evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Cooper, for that message. It is wonderful to hear that our local priorities at the Montreal branch are aligned with those of the Society, and even tie in with this evening's lecture. We at the Montreal branch are very lucky that not only is our current chair distinguished, but so is our former chair, Captain Donald Van Dyke. As mentioned by Professor Cooper, Don was the recipient of a service award from the Society earlier this year for his contributions throughout the years. Don is also a fellow of the Society, and it gives me great pleasure to pass it on to Don.
Fadi, sorry, I think you have to, it said we did not find video, so it's still showing the camera roll.
You are live, Don.
Okay. Good evening, I'm Don Van Dyke, and sorry that I seem to be staring at a blank screen. I'm the past chairman of the Montreal branch of the Royal Aeronautical Society. Over the years, the Royal Aeronautical Society Montreal branch has hosted lectures and colloquia on diverse aerospace subjects presented by both leading experts and students of their craft. RAS named lectures are a special class of recurring high-level events convened to honor distinguished aeronautical pioneers, offer a platform to high-profile speakers representing all sectors of the aeronautical and space community, and are open to everyone, members and non-members alike, at no cost. Owing to pandemic restrictions, tonight's named lecture will be the first in this series not to be held in ICAO headquarters. This evening's named lecture honors Dr. Assad Kotaite, President Emeritus of the Council of ICAO. Universally known as a master conciliator and consensus builder, Dr. Assad Kotaite served with the International Civil Aviation Organization, a specialized agency of the United Nations, for more than 50 years, including 30 as elected president of the Council. His dedication to the safe, secure, and orderly development of international civil aviation was a key factor in its phenomenal global growth. The benefits of his leadership were recognized in many ways. In 1996, he was elected a Fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society, becoming first president of the Montreal branch in 2003. In 2006, his ICAO service was honored by the United States House of Representatives. He was bestowed the lifetime honorary title of President Emeritus of the Council of ICAO on December 7th, 2006, the anniversary of the signing of the Chicago Convention, and celebrated each year as International Civil Aviation Day. In September 2013, the ICAO Council bestowed him the highest honor in civil aviation, the Edward L. Warner Award, recognizing his outstanding contributions to the development of civil air transport. After retiring from active service with ICAO, Dr. Kotaite established the Assad Kotaite Graduate and Postdoctoral Fellowship Fund. Aviation and the traveling public owes a great debt of gratitude to this international civil servant for his dedication and contribution to aviation. The Royal Aeronautical Society Montreal branch is privileged to commemorate the life and work of Dr. Assad Kotaite with an annual lecture in which prominent international aerospace leaders present on advanced topics. It is my pleasure to introduce tonight's lecturer, Major General Mark Smith, Chief Executive Officer and 24th National Commander of the Civil Air Patrol. General Smith leads CAP's more than 65,000 members across the United States in fulfilling the United States Air Force Auxiliary's congressionally chartered missions of emergency services, cadet programs, and aerospace education, in addition to the organization's steadily increasing role in America's homeland security as the newest member of the U.S. Air Force Total Force. A graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy, General Smith is a retired Air Force colonel and a combat veteran. He earned his Doctorate of Education degree in Ethical Leadership from Olivet Nazarene University. I, like all of you, look forward to listening to his thoughts on grabbing that dream by the tail, helping youth to achieve their dream to fly. General Smith, over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, sir, for that kind introduction, and greetings to everyone who's been able to join us this evening. I'm very pleased to renew my association with the Royal Aeronautical Society. On the professional side, amongst my fondest memories is being able to serve as a speaker at number 4 Hamilton Place in London 3 times during the 1990s. I've even got the tie that I love to wear to this day. Royal Aeronautical Society is an impressive organization. Founded in 1886, for us citizens of the United States, that's a long time ago. From a British perspective, history is a little more relative, but 1886, Royal Aeronautical Society has been a thought leader in all things aerospace for a very long time. And I must say, I'm very impressed with the Montreal branch, one of 65 branches of the Royal Aeronautical Society worldwide. And I love what your stated mission is, and that's to inspire the advancement of aerospace knowledge. I love Inspire, and I love all things aerospace as well. I'm honored that you would find me worthy of speaking at an event like this. Frankly, I think you probably have me mistaken for someone else, but thank you anyway, and I look forward to our conversation tonight. And this event tonight, named for one of the greats in the field of civil aviation, Assad Kotaite lived a life of significance, didn't he? Serving as the 3rd president of the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO. And what amazing contributions he made over the course of his life. And it was mentioned that he won the 40th Edward Warner Award. And I love how they worded part of the citation. And it's for eminent contributions to the development of international civil aviation, most notably in the field of diplomacy and conciliation. We could use more of those qualities in the world today, couldn't we? And so let's get into it. I'd like to have a conversation with you tonight about three things. First, I'd like to share a story with you and talk about a story that involves inspiration, dreaming big, and mentorship, the power of mentorship. I was asked as a part of this to talk a little bit about this organization called Civil Air Patrol, which you may not have heard about before, and so I'll do that as well. And I'd like to wax philosophical with you for a couple of minutes regarding lessons that I have experienced and have learned, sometimes the hard way, in leading a large organization during the coronavirus pandemic. And so let's go ahead and get started. And would you go ahead? There it is. Thank you. I don't know about you. When you were a child, did you have a dream what you wanted to do when you grow up? Probably most everybody does, and sometimes that dream will change as life goes on, and sometimes it fades. For me, from the time I was a little bitty kid, I wanted to grow up and be an Air Force fighter pilot. That is what I wanted to do. It burned in me. And this was, of course, a long time ago now. I'm not necessarily a young person, but it's back in the days of sonic booms over the town, back in the days of the X-15 at Edwards Air Force Base, where it wasn't too far away from where I grew up, setting altitude and speed records, flying high enough that their pilots astronaut wings. I thought that was just amazing. I loved airplanes like the P-40, the P-51, the F-86, and I wanted to, when I grew up, to be able to do that. That was my burning desire. However, my reality was a little different. If you would pull the next slide up, Assad. So I grew up in a camping trailer behind an auto garage in the middle of a desert, that if you counted all the ranches in the community, there were about 150 people in my town. Now that photo is courtesy Google. It's not the exact camping trailer that I lived in, but it's a pretty close approximation. I must say it was not a particularly friendly family environment either. Now, as years went on, we were able to go upscale. We moved across the highway into that house that you see on the right-hand side, and it had been sitting empty for quite some time, and I got to live in a real house. It was pretty amazing. There were some interesting experiences, though, in this interesting upbringing that I had. We moved in the wintertime. The source of heat besides the fireplace for the house was an oil furnace with a big grate in the middle of the house. Come springtime, up through the grate came hundreds of little baby scorpions. And so I would wake up in the morning with the little critters looking at me. And to this day, I still shake out my shoes before I put them on. As I said, it was very humble background, if you will, and also not a particularly user-friendly home environment either. As it happened, 23 miles away in the town that had the high school, Lone Pine, California, if you would bring up the next slide, please, was a fellow by the name of Ray Powell. Now, again, this is a long time ago, and Ray he owned a motel there in Lone Pine, and he was a Korean War era Air Force veteran fighter pilot. He was also the area liaison for the Air Force Academy. Now, he found out what my interests were, and he mentored me through the process to apply to go to the United States Air Force Academy. And next slide, please. Miracle of miracles, I was actually accepted into the Air Force Academy. And what is even more remarkable to me as I look back on it, I actually graduated from the place. And I was able to go to Air Force pilot training and ultimately to achieve my childhood dream. If you would bring up the next slide for me, please, Fadi. And ultimately become a United States Air Force fighter pilot. This is back in the day. I started out in the F-4 Phantom II, spent most of my time in the F-15 Eagle. And so from a rather inglorious start, living in a little bitty camping trailer, to being able to achieve this impossible dream that I had, to be a fighter pilot. I loved airplanes. I still love airplanes. But my ability to achieve that dream really revolves around two things. Number one is dreaming big. And when I talk to young people, and when I talk to big people too, what I encourage folks to do is it's fine to dream big. Do not give up on your big dreams. Bihar, who wrote the book, It's Not About the Coffee, he was an executive with Starbucks, called them big, hairy, audacious dreams. And it's good to have big, hairy, audacious dreams for your life, for your organization, for whatever the case may be. And so I encourage young people especially, don't give up on your dream. Find someone who's doing it and work with them to figure out how to get from here to there. And the other part of it is the power of mentorship. I really stress that with young folks, is to find people who've been there, done that, know how to, and have them help you. And in talking with adults, I really stress the power of mentorship as well, because you may be working with a new colleague, or you may be working with a young person, and the topic that you're working with may seem pretty small, may not seem particularly significant, but I'm here to tell you it can have a most remarkable effect on that person. And oftentimes you never know. For me, Ray Powell had a life-changing impact on me for me to be able to achieve that goal. Now, there's another side of the story that it took a long time for me to share this, but as I said, not a particularly user-friendly family environment. It was abusive, and those were very, very dark years for me. And there were many times that I felt that there was no hope and no way to get out of that situation. And on more than one occasion, I came very, very close to committing suicide. It is not a stretch to say that Ray Powell saved my life as a mentor, because he is the individual who, besides serving as a positive role model in my life, was able to show me a path to where there was hope, and there was a way to be able to move forward and move into achieving a dream that would be healthy and happy and delightful. So the power of mentorship, you never know. It may seem like a small topic that you're working with a young person about, or another adult. It may seem like not a big deal, but it could be a very big deal to that person. It could be just the interaction that that person needs to be able to hold on to something, to be able to get that hope, to be able to succeed in moving towards that goal, that dream that they have. So for those of you, both the Montreal branch and for other folks who are listening this evening, if you're involved in helping other folks, especially young people, but adults as well, thank you, because your personal time investment and the effort that you put into mentoring someone can have a fundamental difference in that person's life. Besides helping them to learn a job, besides helping them to move forward in achieving a goal, you never know but you don't know oftentimes what's happening in that person's life. And it could be the absolute life-saving, life-changing event that makes the difference in their lives. So thank you to all of you who are involved in doing that type of thing. So that's my story. Ray Powell was active in my life up through when I was promoted to colonel in the U.S. Air Force before he passed. And he was the positive father figure for me in my life. He was a wonderful man. And from his perspective, not a big deal. My perspective made all the difference in the world. Next slide. We'll go ahead and move on. I was asked to talk about the Civil Air Patrol a little bit. Before I get into the details, I wanted to share with you actions that we've taken within Civil Air Patrol for those two hot buttons that I have on the Dreaming Big and the power of mentorship and anti-suicide resiliency, if you will. Mentorship is baked into the cake that's called Civil Air Patrol, both within our cadet program, the youth development, as well as just recently with our adult volunteers as well. As our adult volunteers progress through the program, mentorship is something that will happen. There will be a mentor that's assigned, and there's thought put into making a good match, good chemistry between mentor and mentee. On the right-hand side, you see the 5 pillars of wellness. I had a team develop for me this wellness program that looks at all aspects of it, but with a special annual emphasis on anti-suicide message for our young people and resiliency as well. All right, Fadi, would you go ahead and bring up the next one, and we'll get into talking a little bit about Civil Air Patrol. And it was formed 6 days before Pearl Harbor. We had visionaries within the United States that could see over the horizon. They could see the storm clouds that were gathering, and they knew that in the fullness of time, the United States would enter the war. And they wanted to find a way for people who could otherwise not serve in the military to be able to contribute and make a difference, in this case, from an aviation perspective. So we were performed, and during World War II, we performed a variety of missions, from anti-submarine patrols to border patrol missions, some things don't change, to towing aerial targets for gunnery practice. That was an exciting mission, to all sorts of things. After the war, we were incorporated by public law, by Congress, to be a non-profit corporation. And then we became officially the auxiliary of the Air Force. And we're a member of the United States Air Force Total Force, which is active duty, Guard, Reserve, the Civil Service, and the Volunteer Auxiliary. By Congress, we have 3 missions: emergency services, cadet programs, aerospace education. And let me spend a couple of minutes and I'll step through each one of those to give you a feel for what it is that we do and talk a little bit more about young people and flying. Next slide, please. Let's see, there it is. There's quick, I'll take a look at the resources for you. We're at about 58,000 volunteers, as we were talking about before the meeting started. Coronavirus has had an impact on our volunteer force like it has pretty much on every other organization. We have community-based organizations called squadrons in 1,400 plus locations around the United States, territories, and overseas as well at U.S. Air Force bases. We have, these are bragging rights now, the largest fleet of single-engine, piston-driven aircraft. We have the largest fleet of public serviced drones, small unmanned aerial vehicles. We have some gliders, a couple of hot air balloons, a bunch of vehicles, and a really robust communications setup as well. So Civil Air Patrol is large and is resourced, thanks to the Air Force, to do a number of things to help around the United States. Next slide. Now I'll get into talking specifically about the missions. So Shaping Lives cadet programs. I love our young people. These are folks ages, generally speaking, 12 up to their 21st birthday. You can see on the left-hand side that there's 4 elements to the cadet program, but what it boils down to is developing confident, competent, ethical leaders. And that is something that we all need more of, is ethical leaders. Whatever line of work they get into. I talk to individuals who've been cadets. I ask them, being a cadet, did it help you to be successful? 100% of the time, the answer is yes. What I wanted to talk about a little bit more is how we are helping young people to achieve their dream of flying, because a lot of our cadets do want to fly. There's this thing called the Youth Aviation Initiative. It's from a couple of years ago. Then Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Goldfein, was looking for a way to increase the pipeline of young people coming up, being able to get their flying tickets, and ultimately joining the Air Force as well. Understanding that to be able to do that, to feed that pipeline, you need to start with a large, broad-based approach to excite young people about all things STEM. And then from that, aviation and aerospace, from that, flying, and ultimately taking the cadets that show that potential all the way through getting their private pilot certificates. And so since the 1st of October, of actually 2018, fiscal year 2019, we've been able to pay for 158 of our cadets to go to what we call career exploration activities. And these are in Civil Air Patrol, we call them National Cadet Special Activities. They're 1 to 2 week long summer activities, and they are in many of them areas of interest to the U.S. Air Force, like cyber, like Civil Air Patrol, or civil engineering, to flight academies, to all, you name it. There's an activity for our cadets. We've been able to take 72 underserved, underprivileged cadets who otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity and get them to flight school, a flight academy, to where it would take them from learning first, getting in an airplane, up to solo. And then for the cadets who are doing pretty well, they competitively are selected to go all the way to get their private pilot certificates. And to date, we have 62 who have earned their tickets, and we have another 53, I believe, who are in the pipeline moving towards getting their private pilot certificates. And so that's just one aspect to where the Air Force made an investment to help us get young people excited about STEM, aerospace, aviation, and flying up through becoming a pilot. Now, I wanted to point out one more thing, is that separately, through donations, through the Civil Air Patrol's foundation, we've been able to, over this last year, provide an additional 150 academic and flight scholarships to our cadets to help them, both in school as well as to fly. Next slide, please. I'd like to talk a little bit about a program called Aerospace Education, which is one of our missions, and it's one that a lot of folks haven't heard about. Now, internally, we work with our cadets and our adult volunteers as well for aviation, aerospace, and our excitement about that. But the external program that we have for aerospace education is really something I'm very proud of. We have some 60 different products for aerospace education that are age appropriate, grade appropriate, award winning in many cases, to help teachers in the classroom for STEM related topics with a flair towards aviation. And the impact is positively helping over 600,000 young people in the classroom across the United States to inspire them towards STEM and aerospace and aviation. Next slide, please. Now, the mission that gets the most press from Civil Air Patrol is emergency services. Pretty much every time there's a flood, hurricane, tornado, earthquake, anything like that, Civil Air Patrol is there, and oftentimes the imagery that you see is taken from a Civil Air Patrol aircraft. We're also do about 90% of the inland search and rescue for the continental United States. This last fiscal year, we were credited with 130 saves, and the slide's already out of date. We're credited with 12 so far this fiscal year that started on October 1st. Now, the innovation, the technology that our volunteers bring to the table has fundamentally changed how search and rescue is accomplished within the United States. In the upper right-hand side, you see a flight depiction of an airplane that went feet wet. The fellow lost his engine and had to ditch the airplane. One team that we have is called the National Radar Analysis Team, and they have, because of their track record, they have a live feed from the FAA, when something happens, they'll ask for this team's assistance. And the analytical tools that our volunteers have built can enhance the data that's provided by ADSB, by the FAA, the radar track, to be able to pinpoint exactly where that airplane went down. And in this case, also accounted for the drift of the fellow after he was floating in the water, so that the rescue helicopter, when they got out there, went exactly where he was. That information was provided in 18 minutes. From the time of notification. The bottom right is cell phone forensics. And this is a case to where a fellow got lost. He was a hiker, got lost, fell in the river. He was not going to survive the night. He was hypothermic. And the search and rescue folks were in another area because the data they were working with was not quite as accurate. Now, the cell phone forensics team has a relationship with all the cell providers, is able to receive that proprietary cell data, and through the analytical tools they have, exactly pinpoint where that person is. So a rescue helicopter is able to come in right to where the fellow was, saved his life as well. Upper right-hand side is a small unmanned aerial system, a drone. We have a large fleet. We use them in search and rescue as well as in disaster response, most notably in Puerto Rico with the earthquake they had, as well as post-hurricane. Our cadets are rock stars at working those things. Maybe you found that kids are really good at their drones as opposed to us big kids. And the bottom right, bottom left, excuse me, is a picture taken by a sensor on a CAP airplane that provides 360-degree view, three-dimensional, rotatable, the use of artificial intelligence to be able to get data to emergency services decision makers quickly and effectively. Just to mention, we have emerging missions in the area of cyber, geospatial information system as well. Next slide, please, Fadi. We also perform a lot of different missions in support of the United States Air Force. The airplane in the upper right has a sensor on the bottom. It's the same sensor ball that you see on like the Reaper and the Predator drones in the Air Force. We provide a surrogate airplane so that the Air Force doesn't have to tie up its resources. The Joint Task Force North refers to border patrols that we do along the U.S.-Mexican border. The bottom right is we're the low target for the air defense folks to practice their intercepts with. And we do a lot of different types of reconnaissance and photo taking for all sorts of things, to include active volcanoes in Hawaii. Next slide, please. So is Civil Air Patrol involved in the COVID-19? Yeah, absolutely. Today is, if I'm got my math correct, some 245 days of continuous support to COVID across the United States and territories as well. We currently have active missions in 15 states. We have logged over 34,500 volunteer days worth of support to COVID. And it's boots on the ground primarily in the local area. Some aircraft, lots of boots on the ground. And there's an example of the type of support that we're doing, preparing and distributing over 7.4 million meals, 2.3 masks and PPE gear, moving over 913 pounds of bulk food. Excuse me. And that's for the folks who have been able to be involved in COVID. But that's not everybody in Civil Air Patrol. But what I'm very proud of is through the pandemic and the lockdowns, the stress, the limitations, I'm so proud of our employees and our volunteers for how they've continued to be engaged and to get the job done of Civil Air Patrol. They've done a wonderful, wonderful job. Next slide. Next slide, please. So let me go ahead and transition for just a couple of minutes before we wrap up. And let me wax philosophical a bit about some lessons that I've learned and perhaps learned the hard way when it comes to leading an organization of some 58,000+ people through a worldwide pandemic. I have a tendency to see things through the lens of leadership. I've been a student and a practitioner of leadership for a long time. And so that's where I tend to start. Since the pandemic has been in force, excuse me, I've really urged our leaders to come from a position of compassion. People are stressed. There is so much going on in the lives of folks, isn't there? This is not the time to have a boss who's a jerk or have a boss who has a heavy hand. This is the time for someone who has some empathy and a gentle hand on the people in their organization. Secondly, I have encouraged our people to be inspirational leaders. This is not the time to have someone who's glass half empty, woe is me, we're doomed. This is the time for leaders to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, to know that we're going to be able to get our organization through this, and we're going to come through it, not just survive, but to thrive. And so to be that inspirational leader in their respective organizations. Next is engagement, and that works on two levels. The leader must be fully engaged in what's going on with their respective organizations. And in a similar manner, making sure that everyone within their organization is engaged as well. Has somebody gone quiet? Has somebody dropped off the radar? Maybe they're having a hard time. Reach out to them, personally reach out to them and make sure they're okay. And if they're not, help them to have the resources they need to be okay. And tying all that up is effective communication. For me, effective communication is a journey, not a destination, because I relearn all the time that I always have to get better at communication. And finding that sweet spot between one extreme, which is just crickets, people aren't hearing anything but the crickets, to people getting spammed with too much communication, so that it's the right amount, the right timing for folks to understand what's happening and also have a voice and have the means by which to say what's going on and have a voice and a role in what's happening within the organization. And so how about folks? The number one imperative that we took in Civil Air Patrol is the safeguarding of the well-being, the wellness of our people. And I'm sure your organizations have been exactly the same, haven't they? And the companies that you work with and work for. Number one is making sure our people are safe. Number two is accommodation. I know that you have operated in this way, and you know all your colleagues and friends. People are having to work from home oftentimes. The kids are home. All of a sudden, mom and dad are part-time educators as well as trying to get their job done. Jobs have been lost. Incomes have been impacted. The ability to just live life is significantly impacted as well. And so folks need to be able to be accommodated based on what their individual situation is. And as leaders, it's important for us to be open and recognize that, and to the max extent possible, accommodate the needs of the folks within our organization. That goes along with the empathy, so that you can understand the stress and the hurt and the struggles that folks are having. And then finally, there's a saying in the Air Force, no wingman left behind. It gets back to the engagement. Make sure that nobody drops through the crack. Personally engaged at that lowest echelon for us, the squadron. Every single person, make sure everyone's accounted for. No one gets left behind. In the Air Force, probably other branches of the U.S. service, and probably you're familiar with it as well, there's a saying about mission first, people always, and they're intertwined, and there's a certain tension between the two. In Civil Air Patrol, I've purposely had our folks focus on the people. If we're taking care of the people, we're going to be able to get the mission done also. But a key part of us being successful at getting the mission done has been to inspire and encourage and enable innovation, to be able to open that up. Oftentimes in large bureaucratic organizations, Civil Air Patrol is one of them, it has a tendency to stifle innovation. How do we take the lid off that so people feel free and safe to bubble up their ideas, and they're free to experiment, to be able to get from point A to point B perhaps a different way. There's been great innovation by our folks at finding workarounds to the limitations that we've lived with coronavirus to get the job done, find a way to get the job done better, and come up with new abilities to help us to grow into new missions. Because it's important for us and for every organization to remain relevant to our existing customers and to potential customers and what their needs are. And so we have been able to recognize and grow into new missions as well. And to be able to do it safely, we've been very thoughtful and aggressive about risk management. So any mission that we've signed up for, we apply risk management to make sure that our folks are going to be safe and successfully taking care of the mission. Next slide, please. And so that is it, I believe. Let's see what that last slide says. There it is, yes. I sure appreciate the chance to spend some time with you this evening, to be able to talk about my story, and that it's okay to dream big, and the power of mentorship and the difference that can make. Thanks for letting me talk about Civil Air Patrol a little bit, and especially about being able to help young people to achieve their dreams as well. And thanks for letting me wax philosophically a little bit about some of the things that I've learned in trying to lead an organization through some challenging times, things that you probably already know, but perhaps there's some food for thought there. I truly am thankful and humble that you would consider me worthwhile to be your speaker this evening. I hope you have some questions for me. There's some time to be able to answer questions. I'll turn it back over to Fadi here in a moment. You'll find it doesn't take much to stump this dummy. I've jettisoned most of my my functional brain cells over the year with all that fast flying, but I look forward to what kind of questions you might like to ask. So Fadi, thanks for the technical work behind the scenes to make all this happen tonight, and back to you to see what kind of questions we might have.
Thank you, General. That was very insightful. As a young person who recently actually got my commercial license, some of the stuff that you were talking about, I could definitely relate to and appreciate your insight. So thank you for that. There is no doubt people have questions. We already have a couple. People can ask questions through the chat function on the right-hand side. And once again, if we do not get through all of them, if you leave your contact information, we will try to follow up afterwards. So on to our first question from Christoph. How do you see the civil aviation recovering post-pandemic, if there is any, in the near future? Sorry, you were on mute there for a second. Sorry, you're still on mute.
How about now?
There you go, you're good now.
For some reason, it kicked me back on mute. I'm not quite sure how that worked. Major Toth, it's great to have you with us. I appreciate the work you do with Air Cadet League of Canada, a wonderful partner, and the Royal Canadian Air Cadets. I've enjoyed that partnership for the last many years. What we have done in Civil Air Patrol is to follow the United States CDC phased guideline for moving from a lockdown ultimately back up to full operations. And we have tailored that for what types of operations we do in Civil Air Patrol. And we have at a state level, we're organized geographically. So a wing commander geographically is in charge of a state, and she or he is better able to gauge than I am how things are progressing. So she will put a plan together, work with my national level COVID team as far as what they can do. So at phase 0, 1, 2, and 3, there's varying levels of activities done for meetings, for training, and for flight activity as well. Phase 0, which is pretty much the lockdown, and unfortunately with this third wave, a lot of our folks are in kind of a lockdown. We're able to do just mission essential flights. But at phase 1, the next one up, we make sure that we're able to do cadet orientation flights, that we're able to continue the flight training for our cadets as well, and then the operational training for our mission air crews also. And so we have tried to bring down even though it's very restrictive in the local communities, we look for the means by which to safely still get that flight training done for the young people and the flight training for our air crews as well. Thank you. Surely somebody else has got a question out there. And Fadi, I believe you're on mute this time.
I was, yes, sir. There we go, thank you.
We're a team. We're a team. Between the two of us, we'll get it right here.
The next question is from Denis. From an international perspective, does Civil Air Patrol have links with other national equivalents around the world?
Thank you. Probably the biggest link that some of you are familiar with is the International Air Cadet Exchange, IACE program, in which I can't remember the number of participating countries. It includes Canada, Great Britain, Australia, Israel, Singapore, China, 20 like that. And before the pandemic shut us down, the ability to have our cadets as well as chaperones go to the different countries and experience what's going on there with our sister organizations. We have a especially close partnership with Canada, as you saw, the Air Cadet League of Canada, and a close relationship with the Air Cadet program in Britain.
Perfect, thank you. Another question is, the United States Air Force is a leader in VR training. Any application for the Civil Air Patrol and inspiring young aspiring pilots?
Yeah, thank you. That's I appreciate you asking that question. The answer is yes. We are adopting the virtual, and it's a work in progress. I'll give you an example on the Air Force side, and then how we're applying it for our cadets as well. The Air Force has had us do a rated pilot preparation program. That's a lot of P's, to where our instructor pilots in our airplanes take young Air Force officers who desire to go to pilot training and give them flight training and simulator training, and they're using the virtual technologies as well. You may know that the Air Force is really getting on board with the VR and changing the what pilot training looks like. How we're going to be applying that within Civil Air Patrol is for those flight academies, for when our cadets are first being introduced to flying airplanes, is to include more of those VR types of tools. We're just now, we got shut down in 2020 because of the coronavirus for doing any of that. But we're in the research phase for what tools would be the best ones to use and to be able to put those into practice at certain flight academies this next summer. Thanks for asking.
Our next question. Thank you very much for the presentation, Major General. What is the most essential skill you have learned through your fighter pilot training that helped you succeed in your military career?
Thanks. I'll back it up to undergraduate pilot training, and there's probably somebody in the audience that's gone through United States Air Force pilot training, and maybe those of you with Canadian Forces have something similar. There is the basic emergency procedure that's taught, memorized by brand new student pilots is maintain aircraft control, analyze the situation, take proper action. And believe it or not, those things have turned into life lessons for me. Little nuggets is, if stuff's going on, is maintain aircraft control. Yeah, but let's talk about the pandemic. All of a sudden we get shut down. Does that mean my hair bursts into flame and I've run around the room screaming? Just maintain, analyze the situation, really think it through, get the smart folks involved, and help to come up with a wise course of action, and then take proper action. And so that's probably the most significant thing I learned in flight training, not fighter training, but to back it up, but that basic undergraduate pilot training that's really helped me throughout my life. Maintain aircraft control, analyze the situation, take proper action.
Our next question, what would your advice be for someone who just turned 40 and finally got a first job in aviation, administration, not flying, major career change, chasing the dream, starting junior all over again, how to climb the ladder faster?
Oh, well, first I would celebrate. I would take the opportunity to celebrate your victory, and take the opportunity to celebrate each victory after that. I think that the basics hold true in that number one, bloom where you're planted, right? Kind of the old adage is, given your assigned duties, perform them to the best of your ability and in a humble manner, and just start with superior job performance. As you are doing that, seek a mentor, someone who's not necessarily like the president of the corporation, but someone who's more senior and who within that organization has more experience. They may be the same age, they may be younger, but from an experience standpoint, and just over the course of time, whether it's over a coffee or whether it's over a lunch or whatever the case may be, is learn. What did you do? What was your path? How did you get from this entry level up to the next level, to the next, to where you're at? And it's that power of mentorship again for someone who's doing that higher level, and how you might be able to successfully get from point A to point B. But congratulations on taking that step of faith, moving into the new career field. I hope you have a wonderful time with it. Celebrate your victory, excel in your assigned tasks, and look for that mentor for figuring out in the fullness of time, don't be in a hurry, but in the right time, be able to move into higher levels of responsibility, and realize it may not be linear straight up. There may be some side types of things into parallel areas of experience. Career broadening would be the term for that. So take advantage of those opportunities as well. Thanks for asking.
We have time for one more question from Adam. From where are the volunteer pilots generally sourced for Civil Air Patrol? Are the aircrafts in the Civil Air Patrol privately owned, or does the Civil Air Patrol own their own fleet?
There's a couple of questions in there, so let's talk about the airplanes first. We own them as the Civil Air Patrol Corporation, a whole lot of airplanes. That's made possible courtesy of the Air Force. We receive funding from them year to year through a grant, and part of that is for acquisition of aircraft. And so we replenish the fleet over the period of time. As far as where the pilots come from, it's from all over the place. We do get current and retired Air Force pilots, and pilots from other services as well. We get pilots who have just general aviation, have gotten their private pilot's license and are building time. And in Civil Air Patrol, they're able to fly with a purpose, is one way of putting it, to where it's not just burning holes in the sky, but it's a chance to go out and help with a disaster response mission, or to transport, or to take cadets up and on their very first flight and bring them back with a smile on their face, things like that. So flying with a purpose. So our pilots come from all over. Thanks for asking that. And for Montreal branch of Royal Aeronautical Society, I really appreciate the invitation to spend time with you tonight. And for those of you who have listened in, thanks for asking the questions, and all the best to you as we navigate this thing called coronavirus. Hopefully we'll be able to be face to face in the near future and be able to shake your hand. Thank you.
Thank you, General. And like I said, unfortunately, that was all the time we had for our Q&A. I would like to now pass the floor over to Vice Chair and Secretary of the Montreal branch, Andrew Daw. Andrew, over to you. Oh, Andrew, you're on mute. You're good now.
Good. Thank you, Fadi, and good evening to our virtual audience. You've had the opportunity to learn, both in the past for many of you and now tonight, of the caliber of speakers who've been invited to this podium. And you know we find the creme de la creme of leaders in aerospace. Of course, this is no accident. We have our criteria, some more obvious than others, and they're mostly met in spades. Nevertheless, I'll check with my colleagues later on this, I don't believe we'd ever looked for trailer trash experience, and that looks to me like an oversight. Now we're going to add familiarity in that domain to our list of qualifications. But seriously, of course, it wasn't only that. It's not only the impressive Air Force career, the decorations that Major Smith has earned. He's a veteran of Operations Desert Storm, by the way. The positions he's held, the one he now holds. We can see that General Smith brings to his job a certain set of values that we all recognize. Together, they make up an ethic that the uncertainty of today's world throws into sharp relief and makes them all more important to us. Mentorship, diversity, teaching the importance of both physical and mental aspects of wellness, broad education that is not merely book learning, but a means to success in any field, effective, empathetic leadership, things that are all about helping others. He wouldn't claim responsibility for creating all of these constituents of the CAP, but as a leader, General Smith clearly espouses them and strengthens them to ensure their continued availability to American youth and as an example to the world. These things happen to fit very well with the aims of the branch and of the society generally, as noted by the President, Professor Cooper, in his address earlier. And all of this is before even mentioning the core activity of the CAP of saving lives and helping people in distress. For me, this has been an interesting and valuable expose of what the CAP is all about. We don't hear about the CAP every day, but having listened to General Smith, I ask myself what a big hole this organization would leave if it were suddenly not there. What you, the audience, have not been able to see is that General Smith's personal way of being fits in entirely with the unselfish values I mentioned above. In all our dealings, he's been a consummate gentleman and has been consistently generous with his time and cooperation to make this evening happen smoothly for all of us. So a very hearty thank you, General Smith, to you, first for doing what you do at the CAP, and then on behalf of this audience and the Montreal branch of the Royal Aeronautical Society, for making your time available to us to educate us in the workings of this marvelous organization. We wish you continued success in leading it. With that, it's my great pleasure to introduce my colleague on the committee and our Young Persons Network representative, Ms. Valeria Mordvinova.
Okay, thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. As mentioned, I am the Young Persons Network representative of the Royal Aeronautical Society for the Montreal branch, and I would like to just briefly say a few words. Firstly, for any young members of RAS in the audience today, if you live in Canada and are not yet part of the Young Persons Network Canada, please contact us, get involved. We would love to see you and see you participate in our activities. For any students who are listening today, or watching today, who are not yet members of the Royal Aeronautical Society, student membership is free. Therefore, I would encourage you to join, and we would also be glad to see you on the YPN. And if you would like to get some more insights prior to joining to make your decisions, feel free to get in touch and get involved even as a non-member. And finally, in March 2021, we will be having our annual presentation competition, which will be held in a live virtual format this year. Anyone under the age of 30 is invited to participate by making a short presentation on any aviation or aerospace topic. And we will be accepting abstracts starting early in the new year. So please keep an eye out on the Montreal branch website for an event page with all the details. Thank you.
Okay, I see I have control again, Fadi. Thank you for throwing it over to me. Valeria, thank you very much. I just want to point out that Valeria is an absolute powerhouse on the committee, and she keeps us all straight and organized, and is invaluable, not only as a representative for YPN, but just as a committee member. Just well done, Valeria. Thank you so much. I think you've had enough speeches from our side. I'm going to keep this very short, but I do know you've got nowhere to go, so you're an audience that I have for just a moment. First of all, I'd like to echo the General's thanks to Fadi, actually. This is not a simple thing to put together, and he has worked extraordinarily hard, along with the whole committee, but Fadi's on the pointed end of this. So Fadi, you've done a great job, sir. Thank you so much across the board. And as the treasurer of the branch, we wouldn't have electricity to run this if you didn't do that other job. So just to second that. And to thank the whole committee who's been involved with this for about a year of planning. You've already been thanked, General, and we don't normally thank people twice, but I don't think we've had a more empathic speaker than you. Someone who represents and breathes the values that they are passing to us. And I'm going to quote Voltaire, not because I know Voltaire, but because I looked it up. Common sense is not so common. And your second last slide about the values of leadership and ethics and everything else, I think that should be a full-page ad in the newspapers across the board. We need role models like you, and you obviously live that. And I personally just absorb that like a tonic. So thank you so much for espousing and living those values. The last people I'd like to thank are all of you that have taken the time tonight to sign in and watch. If you like this, please join us in the Montreal branch and the Society in general. In fact, the first thing you can do is start looking for the next speaker to try and match the caliber of the one we just had. It takes a year to plan, and the planning starts as soon as we all hang up tonight. So please think of that. But thanks to all of the audience, thanks to all the participants, and General, above all, thank you so much for your contributions tonight. And with that, I will let Fadi close us off and wish you all a good evening.
Thank you, John. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.